Hey guys, I'm Jessie, and today I am really excited because I am going to talk to you all about one of my new favorite series that is just now concluding, and that is the Drowning Empire series by Andrea Stewart. The first book in this series is The Bone Shard Daughter. The second book in this series is The Bone Shard Emperor, and the final book in this series is coming out, I believe, in April, and that is the Bone Shard War. And I was lucky enough to get a NetGalley arc of the Bone Shard War, and I read it so quick. As soon as I was approved for it, I was like, we're diving in and we are starting right now. And honestly, I thought it was a fantastic conclusion to this series. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is, should you read this series? Is it worth your time? And, is it one that I think will last the test of time? So I am going to give a spoiler-free review of this series as a whole. And then at the end, I will probably talk about some of the spoiler things about this. But I know that, this book is not even out yet. So I'm not going to really dive too much into spoilers in the very last book. I'm going to mainly stick to, if we do discuss spoilers at the end, I'm going to mainly stick to the first two, which have been out, and then kind of do just the spoiler-free section on the series as a whole and the very last book in this series. So the Drowning Empire series, which starts with The Bone Shard Daughter, is an adult fantasy series that is told in multiple POVs over the course of a couple years. It is set in an island empire where there are multiple different islands kind of all over, and they travel between them, but there is like the one main imperial island, and it kind of rules over all of them. There's definitely a lot of class disparity in this book, as well as a kind of tyrannical emperor in the first book. We really dive into a lot of the politics of this island empire. We get a lot of different POVs from different people and from different classes and who are from different, kind of worlds. Our first, kind of main character is Lynn, and she is the daughter of the emperor. We also follow Jovis, who is a smuggler who is trying to find his missing, possibly dead wife. We follow Felu, who is the daughter to a governor on a different island. And then we also follow Romany, who is a, orphan kind of lower class, maidservant who is very close and forms a relationship with Felu. We also have this one group who is called the Shardless Few, and they are kind of your rebels in this story. They are the ones that want a lot of government overthrow, and they want to throw over this evil tyrannical government in order to establish a council of the people in order to rule over this island. In this series, one of the big extenuating circumstances, one of the big things that kind of drives the desire for revolution is what they call the tithing ceremony. And what this is all children, I believe age 12, are mandatorily taken to this tithing ceremony, no matter what island they are on. And they actually have a piece of bone removed from, I believe it's behind the ear. And that piece of bone is then taken to the emperor. And he has this store of what they call shards. So shards of bones. And not every child survives this. The majority do, but not every child does. And what's even worse than the fact that they are just hammering out a piece of bone from these children is the reason for this is these bone shards facilitate the magic on this world. So the emperor is able to build what is called constructs. So he builds them out of dead body parts and animals and things like that. And then you carve on the bone shard and you insert it into the construct, and it makes it kind of come to life. And depending on how many shards you use and what commands you use depends on the sentience and kind of level of understanding and thinking of these constructs. They can range from, you know, small little animals that just do basic things all the way up to almost human-like constructs that are used as kind of not governors, but they're used as like the counsel to the emperor. It's very strange, right? And Lynn is actually the one who is, she's learning this bone shard magic. And basically she is trying to establish her place as heir to her father, because she also has an adopted brother who is kind of competing against her to also establish himself as heir to his father, his adopted father. And Lynn doesn't have very many memories in the first book. She doesn't remember very much past the past 5 years. So she's trying to unlock these memories while trying to learn bone shard magic and prove herself to her father. Along with using the bone shards from other people to power constructs, the other kind of really terrible thing about the magic system is that while the constructs are functioning, it actually drains the life force of the individual whose shard is within them. So say person A, their shard is within one of these constructs, and that construct is out, you know, performing its tasks. It is slowly draining the life force of the actual person. And that person will eventually die of what they call shard sickness. And so this is a big contributing factor to the shardless few wanting to kind of overthrow this empire. So while we have the perspective of Lynn, who is the daughter of the emperor, I also mentioned we have the perspective of Jovis. And Jovis is this fun and not a hero guy who is just going around trying to find his missing wife. His wife went missing and he just knows that he is traveling after this boat that took her, trying to find her. And he is, you know, all over trying to find her. He kind of gets in with some not so great people, and that kind of leads to him doing things that he doesn't want to do. All things considered, he ends up becoming an unwilling hero and kind of saving kids from this tithing ceremony. And he's like, I never wanted to be a hero. This isn't my thing. I'm not a hero. But he becomes a hero. He also ends up with a talking animal companion, which, is there anything better than an animal companion, especially one that is sentient and talks? No. So he's doing that. And then we have Felu and Romany over on another island. Felu wants to be different than her father. Her father is the governor, and she knows that he's kind of corrupt and bad, but she still sees the good in him. She wants to improve things for the regular people of her island, but she kind of goes about it the wrong way. She's kind of brash. She's kind of, you know, bold, and she doesn't go about things right. But she is in love with Romany, who is this orphan. And of course her father is nah. And Romany is a member of the Shardless Few. So that brings in a lot of conflict in their relationship and trying to figure out how they fit together and if they can fit together, because one is from this ruling class that they basically want to overthrow, and the other is the one that, you know, wants to overthrow them. And, you know, we see their relationship is a big focus of, you know, their story. So we start off and, you know, everybody's kind of separate, and near the end of the book, you know, obviously all of our POVs start coming together. We also have old magic that has kind of disappeared from the world, and it starts kind of making its way back. And the best way I can describe it is an elemental magic. And these people with the elemental magic are ancient and they are immortal, but they were wiped out by Lynn's family many, many, many years ago. And they're starting to reappear. And so that's kind of terrifying and exciting at the same time. And nobody knows why they're starting to reappear, but also islands are beginning to sink and nobody knows why. So there's a lot of different conflict going on in this series, and that's just kind of the brief overview. There is so much more to it. But honestly, if any of that sounds really interesting, if any of the, you know, relationships and, you know, the political machinations sound good to you, I highly recommend this series. It only gets better from the first book. I love the second book because it really brings a lot of our characters together. And that is something that I really like in series, is when we bring all of our characters together. And then the final book in the series really does wrap everything up nicely. It is a very good fitting conclusion. It has a very bittersweet ending, which is something that I absolutely love seeing in my stories, because not everything works out perfectly. Not everything is wrapped up in a nice little bow. It's kind of messy. It's kind of sad, but it's kind of happy, and everything happens for a reason. I really liked seeing that. I thought the ending was really well done. There were some things that kind of bothered me, mainly the one main villain. There's a couple of different people who can be kind of seen as the antagonists, but the one that I see as like the main villain, I didn't fully get his motivations. I felt like it was just like a see the world burn kind of thing, and it was very self-destructive, and it was very like, I'm just taking everybody out, as opposed to having like a thought out plan or a real focus. So that wasn't my favorite, but he was pretty terrifying. I also really liked that there were a lot of threads throughout the story that kept connecting and interweaving throughout all 3 books that we got a good conclusion to within the last book in this series. I hate when we kind of set something up in book 1 and then it never really has a conclusion. It never really comes to fruition. And you're like, but why was that even talked about? Why was that even like a plot point? She really does a good job of explaining things and tying everything together, all the different storylines, and making it all, you know, make sense and work together really, really well. The story was very engaging. It was something that like kept me sucked in. There was never really very many like dry, boring moments. Like everything was just very quick, very fast paced. I thought it was paced very well. And I really just enjoyed it. There are some really actually enjoyable romantic moments in this book as well, in the series as a whole, because they do not all take place in book 1. So in book 1, like I said, not a spoiler, Romany and Feyre are together from like the jump. And it's a lot of it is their conflict and their differences in opinion and their differences in class and their differences in, you know, society. And I really enjoyed their relationship because it's kind of fighting to make things work. And do we make things work? And do we not? And, you know, will things work? Can we come together being, you know, from 2 different worlds? I really, really enjoyed their relationship, and their relationship is throughout the entire series. And then, not to spoil anything, but there is a relationship in book 2 that I absolutely adored, and that continued on to book 3. And honestly, there were parts about it in the 3rd book that upset me, that I don't like seeing in books. Some decisions that were made by the author that I thought I didn't necessarily need, but ultimately, I liked the conclusion of this relationship story in the 3rd book from the relationship that starts in book 2. That's kind of all I can say about that particular one without giving any spoilers. I will talk about that particular thing more in the spoiler section of this video, because I do want to kind of tell you like the things that I don't like, because I don't think that this is a perfect book, a perfect series, but it is one that I greatly enjoyed. And I think I gave them all 5 stars because I never expect a book to be perfect. I expect to enjoy it. And if I really enjoyed it, then I'm probably going to give it 5 stars. I did have some very emotional moments in this series as a whole, specifically in the last book. There were definitely like tear-inducing moments, and y'all know if I cry, I'm probably going to rate it 5 stars. Because I like to be in my feels. But yeah, I loved it overall, and I think if you like a very political revolution-based story, you will absolutely love this. If you like imperfect people in an imperfect world trying to do the best they can, but sometimes failing, and sometimes they don't realize that the things that they're trying to do for the greater good are actually doing more harm than good, I definitely say read this. It is adult fantasy, but I think that it is one that would work really well for people that are either newer to adult fantasy or that are intimidated by like high epic fantasy, because while it is, you know, a level up, it is still very accessible and easy to understand and easy to follow. So there's no real big confusing plot lines or anything like that. And it does end very well with a very satisfying ending, even if it is bittersweet. Now, I want to kind of jump into some spoilers. And mainly, I'm going to be talking about the relationships and the villain and some things I just wasn't the hugest fan of, things I don't like in a lot of my series. But that didn't bother me enough to not give it 5 stars. So Lynn ends up in book 2 forming a relationship with Jovis. And Jovis is probably one of my favorite characters, right? Like, I love his characterization. I love his snark. And he's just a lot of fun. And he's a good guy who means well and does some things wrong and gets mixed up with the wrong people. And I love him. But I love seeing their relationship grow in book 2. And then you finally get this like culmination of them admitting their feelings to each other. And then book 3 has this like 2-year time jump. And Jovis is like assumed dead. We find out very quickly he is not. He is assumed dead. And Lynn is grieving. And, you know, he is actually like enslaved basically. So they're apart, right? Like 90% of the last book, we don't have any Jovis and Lynn interactions. And honestly, I don't like that. Typically, that is like a second book thing with romances. And I don't like it. I don't like it in this book. I don't like it in any books. I don't like when we finally get our main love interests together and then they are separated right away for an entire book, pretty much. Like, I feel like it made sense in this story and it was done well, but it also just, I don't like that. I want them together. I want to see the relationships like grow as opposed to be like, hey, we've been apart for 2 years now. I didn't like that one aspect of it. That being said, I thought the culmination of their relationship was beautifully done. It made me sad, it made me happy, and I really liked how we kind of brought them back together, and then that very, very end just hit you so hard, and you're like, there's no way this is how it ends. And then you get like a little bit more and you're like, okay, but this still, like, this isn't what I wanted, but I still love it. So I do really appreciate how Andrea Stewart did that, but I still would have liked them together for a longer period of time in the book. The other thing that I wasn't like the biggest fan of, like I said, was the motivations of the like kind of main villain. Like I said, he just kind of wanted to see the world burn. And it didn't make sense because he was obviously mistreated. He was a monk. He was mistreated. And then it's like he finds out that he has these like ancient powers that are starting to reappear. But instead of fighting, you know, for his rights or for the people that are starting to come back to this world with this power, he's like, I just want to burn it all down. And he wants to like control these new beings basically. And he wants to kill them and he wants to kill the regular people and he wants to overthrow the government. And he wants all these things that don't really work together. Like, I never fully understood why he hates the other, what they call Alanga, which are the kind of like the big magic users in this world that are coming back. But he is one. So like that to me didn't make a whole lot of sense, but the other antagonists, their motivations do make sense. So there's that kind of, if you go into this or if you want to know more, if you don't mind spoilers and you've listened to this, just kind of know that to me, he didn't make sense. So if you read this and want to tell me why he did, let me know. But yeah, I thought this book was really well done. I didn't have too many spoilers to talk about. And I just think that everybody should read it. Definitely pick up The Bone Shard War once it is officially released to the world. And let me know what you think about it. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. My name's Jessie, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.